You're listening to The Nourished Child, episode number 100. I'm Jill Castle, a registered dietitian and pediatric nutritionist, and this is a show about child nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of raising them. If this is your first time to the show, I welcome you. I'm glad you're here. And if you're a repeat listener, I really appreciate the fact that you keep coming back. And I hope that the things that you're hearing from this show are fulfilling some need or satisfying some level of knowledge that you've been missing out on or some insight that you've been looking for. So thanks for coming back to the show over and over again. This is episode 100, which I cannot believe it. And it so happens to coincide with the beginning of the new year. So that is really kind of fun and exciting. I'm sure that as you have been starting this year, you've done the whole resolution, you've thought about the past year, and you've made some decisions about changes that you might have wanted to make. You've maybe made some plans and probably looked back over the past, and now you're looking forward. And I'm hoping today with this episode, which is really focused on food parenting and my best tips for having the best food parenting year ever, I'm hoping my tips will provide some inspiration for you in the area of parenting around food with your children so that you can get better at doing it. I think that's one of the goals of this show, is to not only just share some basic nutrition information as it relates to children, but it's also to help you be better at feeding your kids and be more likely to raise a healthy child who's also a healthy eater. So you'll be able to find this show and all the show notes, the links I mention, over at my website, www.jillcastle.com/100. That's 100 for episode number 100. So let's cue the music.
Welcome to the Nourished Child Podcast, a show about childhood nutrition, feeding kids, and dealing with the ups and downs of growing a healthy child. Here's your host, registered dietitian and childhood nutrition expert, Jill Castle.
Okay, everyone, we're talking about food parenting today, and more specifically, we're talking about 10 tips to make this one of the best food parenting years you've ever had. And you might be sitting there and wondering, what the heck is food parenting? It's sort of a newish term, and it is really surrounding that whole idea of food and feeding and taking into account a child's development. The evidence and the study around food parenting is gaining attention, and particularly as parents like yourself and professionals who help parents like you are looking for the most effective means to encourage healthy eating in children so that kids grow up being healthy and developing a healthy relationship with food. So food parenting basically comprises how much control you use around food. And when we talk about control, we're talking about restriction. So food restriction. We're talking about food rewards. So we'll get into that in a little bit. We're also talking about pressure to eat. Those are all signs of using control around food. Food parenting is also how much structure you're using in your home when it relates to food availability, accessibility, and timing of meals and location, and actually what you're serving your children for meals. Who would have known that structure would encompass so many different things? Thirdly, food parenting is also related to how you promote autonomy in your child. So this gets into the whole realm of child development and how are you supporting your child's development, their independence, their exploration, their autonomy over time as they grow and change. And remember, children are always growing and changing. Infants don't stay infants forever. They turn into toddlers and children and teenagers. And with that, their developmental drivers, their needs around what they need to fulfill their social emotional development, their physical development, their cognitive development those tie into, believe it or not, how we parent, and more specifically, as we're speaking about today, how we parent around food. And then a fourth aspect of food parenting is what you're doing as a parent to role model the kind of adult you want your child to grow into. And I know that all of us out there, myself included, want to raise children who, are healthy eaters and live in a healthy body and have a future, a promising future of health. But, how are we executing that? Are we supporting and executing that with lectures and lots of rules around food? Or are we role modeling that based on the life that we live ourselves as an example for our children? So that's sort of like the big umbrella about what food parenting is. And there are a lot of benefits that surround good food parenting. We know from the literature that, children who experience good food parenting tend to be healthier eaters. What does that mean? They tend to eat whole grains, fruits and vegetables. They tend to have a better attunement of what their appetite is, meaning that they eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full or satisfied. We know the benefits of good food parenting are going to lead us to having a healthier child and a child who has a healthy relationship with food. And that's really important, especially in today's world where we've got so many mixed messages about food and eating and body weight and shape and size and fitness level. So becoming a good food parent, I think, is enormously important. And if you're not paying attention to it, I really hope that you do start paying attention to it, because I think it makes a big difference, not only in the health of your child, but your confidence in being a good parent around food. It really helps you erase the guilt of not getting meals on the table or not having healthy food in the house or having a kid that, only wants to eat sweets and goes crazy with them. When you're a good food parent, you've got your system in place, you've got your strategy, and you know what you're up against and you know how to respond to what you're up against. So I'm hoping that, there is an interest on your part in becoming a better food parent, and I sense that there probably is. So let's get into the top 10 tips, or just 10 tips. They're not really like the top 10 tips, but they're 10 tips for helping you have your best food parenting year ever. And number one is stay calm. It's not personal. So feeding kids, as you know, as a parent, comes with its ups and downs, and we can't always predict when those ups and downs are going to happen. And, anything from like food refusal, picky eating, the child who is overeating or overindulgent with particular foods, or the child who likes to be, on their same old everyday diet and not being very adventurous. These situations can be frustrating, and they can make you feel like you're not a great parent. And what I will say is that many of these ups and downs of feeding and eating are very much related to where your child is in his development. And it is related to your child's temperament. We've talked about that on the show before, that we not only need to know our child's developmental stage, but we need to understand their temperament and be responsive to that, not cave into it and cater to it, but understand that there are certain responses our kids are going to have based on their temperament. And we need to sort of be aware of that so we can navigate around that. His mood in the moment on a particular day can dictate his response to food and to eating and to any of the things that you're trying to effort on behalf of his eating. So what I want to say is, don't get too frustrated by your child's responses around food. It's not personal. There are so many things that it can be a reflection of. So don't take it personally, take it in stride, and don't react too much. I like the advice, and I've used it since my kids were, so young. And I can't even remember who told me this, but they said, just don't react. Anytime your child is doing anything at the dinner table, eating, not eating, throwing food on the floor, don't react. just be very sort of neutral. Don't have your emotions complicate the situation, because getting a reaction can be in and of itself the driver of your child's future behavior. So try to stay as neutral as possible. And just remember, you're putting your best effort forward with your best intentions. And if your child isn't in 100% agreement with those efforts, it's not personal. It's just whatever's going on with your child. So take it in stride, stay calm, and move on. Number 2, second tip for having your best food parenting year ever is to keep the meal table pleasant. So I want to encourage you and even challenge you to just have a smile on your face when it's time to sit at the table with your kids for a meal. Be happy to have your kids around the table, especially when you think about today's busyness and all the different things that we are all asked to be doing 24/7. To have the almost luxury of being around a table with your children and your family, that should put a smile on your face. So I challenge you to try and put a smile on your face when you all get to be around the table. Use that opportunity to connect with your children, to talk and communicate with them, and also let them have some independence. You don't have to do everything for them. We're going to talk about that in a little bit as one of my other tips, but independent kids are happy kids. They like to do things for themselves, and sometimes they like you to do things for them, and you can do things for them. But there's a balance. There's a push-pull around independence and dependence. And it gives you an opportunity to figure out how you're going to handle that. But when it comes to coming to the table, be happy you can all be together. If you are struggling with feeding or dinner time, what's going on at the dinner time, I invite you to check out my workshop. It's available. It's a 2-hour workshop called Eat in Peace, and you can get it on my website. It's $29. It's a 2-hour, as I said, workshop, and it comes with a companion workbook. So that you may find beneficial in helping you construct happier family meal times. Number 3, allow your child to do more than you think he can. So, as I mentioned, you don't have to do everything for your child. I think we oftentimes usurp our kids' growing independence and skills when we try to do everything for them. Sometimes we feel like we're better parents if we're doing everything for our kids. I want to challenge that idea. I think that is a belief that is more about you than it is about your child. So I'll go out on a limb and say that, but that's more about you needing fulfillment in doing things for your child. That speaks more to your, self-worth or something like that. Whereas truly kids need to have independence. They need to be learning to do things on their own. And when you understand that a child's self-esteem is very much rooted in their ability to develop skills for themselves, you might change your mindset on this. You do not need to do everything for your child, nor should you. There's that balance of letting your child do things that they can be capable of. It might not be easy and they might not be a master at it, but starting to help them learn how to do specific skills is really important. And it's okay if those skills are a little bit out of their reach, because that's how they learn and they get better at things. And when they learn and they get better at skills, they start to feel better about themselves. They start to feel confident about themselves. The opposite is when we are doing everything for them, we're teaching them that they're not capable. We're teaching them that they are not able to do these things. And that can have an impact on their developing self-esteem and self-worth. So I encourage you to let your kids pour their water, their milk, cut their food, spread their peanut butter, mix their yogurt parfaits, tear the lettuce, set the table, load the dishwasher. Let's let our kids have some more independence when it comes to food and eating and all the little chores that go around those events. Chaperone your child? Absolutely. Teach them if they need to be taught? Absolutely. But give them a chance to reach a little bit. And don't be there saving them with the safety net and catching them and taking over. It's okay if they fumble and you catch them, but don't take over. I remember myself when, I was a younger mom and I had 4 very young children and everybody wanted to cook. And it was like, this is pure chaos in my kitchen. But, it can be that way, but it's far more important for the child to have the opportunity to try and get a chance to actually reach mastery with some of these things than it is important for you to have a clean kitchen. So I encourage you to allow your child to do more than you think he or she can. So those are the first 3. Let me just recap really quick, and then we'll go on to number 4. Number 1, stay calm. It's not personal. Number 2, keep the meal table pleasant. Number 3, allow your child to do more than you think he can. Number 4, keep it complimentary. Let's not label our children picky eater, eats too much, big girl, big boy. These are all very sensitive labels to a child. They are focused on how well or how unwell a child's eating, how big or how small a child is, what your child looks like, his shape, his size. These are all very, very tender topics, and we need to be very careful about these topics. Honestly, it's better not to comment on these things at all. And when you do, these things come up, if questions come up, it's really good to just be complimentary, to tell your child that, you love them just the way they are. Try to always say something nice. Not only will you become the ultimate supporter of your child, you will create a little person who does the same for others. I interviewed Rebecca Scritchfield not too long ago on the topic of body kindness. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, we talk a lot about how we talk to our children and how the words carry so much meaning and influence, and how those words can be permanently branded on a child's self-worth and self-esteem. So take care, keep it complimentary, and take a step back. If you feel like you're not doing great in this area, take a step back, do some literature reading, read a book, read Body Kindness, read other books on building children's self-esteem. This stuff happens around the table. It happens in the kitchen. It happens when your kids are eating. So it is related to nutrition. So again, number 4 is keep it complimentary. Number 5, allow your child to experience a sense of hunger and create some space between meals and snacks. So many of us are afraid that our child will be hungry. We're afraid of what our child might do if they experience hunger, throw a temper tantrum, not be able to sleep through the night. I want to push you a little bit here to recognize that if you're a good food parent, you're on your game with structure and regular meals and snacks throughout the day, your child's getting plenty of opportunity to fill his little gas tank. And it is okay for his little gas tank to be empty for a little bit. It actually helps children when they get a grumbly tummy. It helps them regulate their eating a little bit better. Because when kids are fed sort of on the hour, every hour, or they're more inclined to graze, they don't really get those hormonal triggers of hunger between meals. They never really get that true sense of what it feels like to be hungry. And when you don't have that true sense of what it feels like to be hungry, and you know what that is, it's like the tummy grumbles, we have low blood sugar, we can get moody, we feel grouchy, we might feel thirsty, we might have low energy. All of those things can be the sign of hunger. If we don't let kids feel that itch of hunger between meals and snacks, it messes up their ability to regulate their eating. It messes up their internal barometer around the appetite hormones. So we want to create space between eating sessions. And depending on your child's age, it could be anywhere from 2 to 3 hours for a toddler, 3 to 4 hours for a child, 4 to 5 hours for a teenager. And what I mean is that there's a space of a block of time where we're not eating. We're doing something else. We're not eating. So this space can really start to help your child understand the ups and downs of appetite and learn the difference between physical hunger versus head hunger. So physical hunger, the true body signs of appetite, versus head hunger, which is I think I'm hungry. Oh, I haven't had anything to eat for a while. It must be time for me to eat. Or, oh, that piece of chocolate cake looks great. I'm hungry. Those are signs of head hunger, not true physical hunger. So I want you, again, number 5, to be a good food parent and to have your best food parenting year ever, is to start to allow your child to experience that sense of hunger and be okay with your child feeling hunger. And I guess take it a step further and empathize with your child and let them know that, yeah, you understand that they are feeling hungry, and reassure them when it will be time for a meal or a snack. If you've got a child who grazes all day long and doesn't really have that space between meals and snacks, this will be a little bit difficult to get started with because your child's learned a habit. And to break a habit, that can be uncomfortable sometimes. But I encourage you to do so. If you truly want to be a good food parent and raise a healthy eater, we need to help our children understand their appetite cues. And we want to help them eat around those appetite cues rather than eating for external cues like a good-looking piece of pie or a sense of boredom and there's nothing else to do, so let's just have a snack. Okay, let's take a little break from our sponsor, which today's episode is sponsored by Try New Food, How to Help Picky Eaters Taste, Eat, and Like New Foods. This book is now available in Kindle and in paperback on Amazon. I just created the Kindle version and popped it up on Amazon, so just in time for the new year to start. I hope you check it out. It's a workbook geared towards parents, addressing the full spectrum of picky eating, from the initial signs and clues that your child might be becoming picky in those toddler years, all the way up through that older child who is more of an extreme picky eater or might be a sensory-based picky eater, or even a child with ARFID. This workbook takes you through all the science, the recommendations to obviously approach this condition with a food, feeding, and development filter. So I use sort of how I approach it in my practice, the system I've developed for the clients that I've had in my practice, particularly with those who have more extreme picky eating. You can get sort of my overarching approach, attitude, mindset, goals for that child in the book. Again, that's Try New Food, How to Help Picky Eaters Taste, Eat, and Like New Foods. Okay, we are back. We are talking about 10 tips to help you have your best food parenting year ever. Number 1 was stay calm. It's not personal. Number 2 was to keep the meal table pleasant. Number 3, allow your child to do more than you think he can. Number 4, keep it complimentary. And number 5 was allow your child to experience a sense of hunger and create that space between meals and snacks. So number 6 is work on a predictable schedule for meals and snacks. This ties into number 5. But what I want to talk about here is, not just like the framework of the day, breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 5. I don't want to talk about the framework so much as what I want to talk about is predictability. So when you have predictability around meals and snacks, that builds security in children. They know what's happening and they know when it's happening and they learn to count on it. Unpredictability is insecurity. If you don't have predictability with breakfast, lunch, and dinner and a routine snacks during the day, your child can build a sense of insecurity, a sense of even over-focus on food, asking those questions. When's dinner? What's for dinner? When can I have a snack? When children don't understand the predictability around meals and snacks, it can foster insecurity and an over-focus and over-questioning about questions around food and eating and timing and all of those things. Knowing what to expect and what is expected can help keep your child calm and reassured. So what does it mean? It does mean having regular times for meals and snacks, but it also means having a regular place for meals and snacks. Look at school. School does this every day. They've got a routine around meal times and snack times, and kids do great with routines. So take advantage of this and implement some schedule and structure in your home. It will make you a better food parent. It also helps you reinforce sort of the rules or the boundaries around eating. When you have a system and a structure in place, it's a lot easier to say to your child, nope, that's not time for lunch right now. Nope, it's not time for a snack right now, but we can have one in 30 minutes. That's when snack time is. It just makes those conversations a little bit easier for you. Okay, moving on to number 7, avoid the power struggles and the food fights. Let's not fight about food in the new year. Let's not bribe or threaten or push our kids. So let's just quickly review. Pressure to eat is a power struggle that can potentially lead to a food fight. So what is pressure? Let's take just one more bite before you leave the table. Can you try this new food before you get up? You need to eat everything on your plate before you can have dessert. Okay, these are pressure to eat. It's a controlling way of feeding your child. Doesn't work. Bribing, another one. It's another thing that can initiate power struggles around the table. You can have a cookie if you eat a bite of broccoli. So it's that bribing, that bargaining, that negotiating chip around getting your child to eat what you want them to eat. It's a kind of a manipulative way of getting your child to eat, even though you don't go into it saying, I'm going to manipulate my kid. But when we use things like desserts, cookies, ice cream, candy, when we do that sort of stuff, we shift the hierarchy of food, and our children don't value those foods we're trying to get them to eat. They actually value the reward food, the food you've been using to bribe them to do what you want them to do. Another thing that leads to power struggles are using threats and even punishment if your child is not eating the way you want them to. So, for example, if you don't take another bite, or if you don't eat this tonight, if you don't eat your vegetables, you're going to be eating this in the morning. So I don't think a lot of parents are doing that anymore. I still hear stories from families, from parents who had this experience themselves. And I imagine that there probably are some people who occasionally resort to threats of punishment around eating. Again, these are negative ways of feeding our kids. They don't foster trust. They don't foster a positive relationship with food, and they're quite manipulative. They leave your child feeling powerless and can damage the relationship with food and leave negative memories for years to come. So unfortunately, oftentimes we see kids remember the negative stuff. The positive stuff just sort of gets filed away and it doesn't get recognized as positive or negative, but the negative stuff gets remembered. And for some kids, it can be pretty damaging. So I want you, as the new year rolls around, to avoid those power struggles and those food fights. And if that's the way you're operating, then I'm going to encourage you to revamp your feeding approach. And if you're feeling at a loss and you don't know how to do that, I do have lots of resources on my website that will help you with that. And I also have a new course coming out called the Nourished Child Blueprint. And it's actually a revamp of my current course, the Nourished Child Project, but I'm revamping the whole thing. And it will help you take a much more diplomatic approach to feeding your child and will help you to rock it in the food parenting arena. So stay tuned for that. I'm hoping to get that out in March of this coming year. Okay. Number 8, get comfortable with saying no. And I want to assure you, you are not being mean when you say no. I'm saying, let's say no with things like no more candy. That's presuming that your child's already had a little bit and you're putting the stopgap on that. Or saying, no, it's not snack time yet. You're not saying you can't have any snacks. You're saying it's just not time right now. So kids need a leader and a guide around food. A no teaches your child that there's a limit or a boundary that is set, and it is completely okay to say no to your kids. I've got 4 kids. They hear no from me. They're resilient. Children are resilient and they are adaptable. Yet I see lots of parents getting stuck here. They are really shying away from having the conflict associated with saying no. Let me tell you, from mom to mom or mom to dad, you're not doing yourself or your child any favors by leading him to believe the world will bend with his requests and with his will. It won't. And it will be a hard lesson for your child to learn, especially in his formative years if he's never heard the word no very much and hasn't learned how to accept a no. So I will have to share here, one of my childhood complaints when I was a little kid was that my parents would say no, but they wouldn't give me a reason. They would just say no. And I was an argumentative kid. I liked to negotiate. If you've heard me talk about my older daughter, you can kind of sense where she got her traits as well. But I did not like to have just a flat no without a rationalization or a reason. It used to really frustrate me. So for my own kids, I just adopted the mentality that if I were to say no, I would give a reason why. And it might be just a simple reason because I said so. And that rarely is my response because that's a frustrating response too, frankly. But I like having the policy of giving a why with a no. So no more candy right now. You've had a lot today. And in fact, you had several parties this week. So we've had a lot of candy for the week. So we can have more next week, but it's a no for right now. Or no, it's not snack time right now. We just had lunch 2 hours ago. We're going to have snack in another hour. Let's figure out what it's going to be. But right now the kitchen's closed. So that's what I mean when I say give a why with your no, but I encourage you to say no. I encourage you to say it unapologetically. Don't feel guilty for saying no if it's a well thought out no and you know it needs to be a no. Stand up, be that leader, say no. Your child will adapt. And if it's a terrible, ugly tantrum that you get as a result of it, then you need to kick in your other parenting skills and decide what you're going to do when your child acts out and behaves in ways that aren't socially acceptable or are disrespectful. That's, unfortunately, sometimes that happens, but that's where you have to pull up your parenting big girl pants and be the parent and parent your child. Because again, we are our children's guides. They don't learn this stuff from the big world outside of our home. They learn this from us. And so I encourage you, again, number 8, to get comfortable with saying no. Number 9 of the 10 tips for helping you have the best food parenting year ever is to employ your kids and have them share responsibilities with you. Now, I use the word employ as a verb, not of the true, pay them a salary. That's not what I'm talking about. Just like they can do more than you think they can do, they can also take on jobs and responsibilities for the household, for the family. They can't contribute financially to your mortgage, but they can surely help out around the house. It's a team effort, a family effort. It's part of being in the family. Everybody helps everybody out. And it's not just mom and dad who does everything. So that's a pretty tough road to hoe when you are the person who's doing it all. It can be very hard. So employ your kids, get them to share responsibilities, taking out the trash, loading the dishwasher, going through the recyclables and putting them outside. Whatever your family needs in order to distribute the load a little bit, try to get your kids involved in that. The last tip for having the best food parenting year ever is to enjoy every minute of being with your kids and feeding them and nourishing them, and be selfish about creating that enjoyment. Because listen, time flies, and it won't be long before you're like me, looking back on all the years and wondering where they went and how fast they went by. So if you look for the joy of feeding your children, you'll find it. If you look for the glimmers of progress, you'll find it. So these are the things that are going to sustain your hard work at feeding your child and raising a healthy eater. Keep your eye on the prize, the big goal, the end result, the child, the adult you want to raise. What is that big goal? What kind of a child, when it comes to food and eating, do you want to raise into an adult? Keep your eye on that prize. But don't forget that feeding are some of the most intimate moments you'll have with your child, sitting around the table, talking, connecting around food, sharing food, discovering new things. These are intimate moments. Enjoy them. Don't be so caught up in, oh, God, I worked all day and now I have to make dinner. And yeah, I know that's hard, but try to find some space for joy as well. So just to recap real quick, all the 10 tips for having the best food parenting year ever. Number 1, stay calm. It's not personal. Number 2, keep the meal table pleasant. Number 3, allow your child to do more than you think he can. Number 4, keep it complimentary. Number 5, allow your child to experience a sense of hunger and create space between meals and snacks. Number 6, work on a predictable schedule for meals and snacks. Number 7, avoid the power struggles and the food fights. Number 8, get comfortable with saying no and realize that no does not mean that you're a mean person. Number 9, employ your kids and share responsibilities. And number 10, enjoy every minute and be a little selfish about creating that enjoyment. I hope you found at least one tip here that you might be inspired to work on as you enter into the new year. Let's collectively raise a glass to making this new year the one where you develop into a better food parent who has a better handle on their mindset, their attitudes, and their interactions around food and eating with your child. Let's make happy memories at the table. Let's nourish your child's self-esteem by creating opportunities for independence and autonomy. Let's nourish your child with balanced meals and create reasonable space for things like sweets and treats. Let's be fearless, and let's nourish and nurture your child. Happy New Year, my friends. Now go give that child in your life a loving squeeze today. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.